Elizabeth. Hello, everyone. Can't see you, but we trust you are there. So glad to be with you. First, I want to thank Elizabeth and Ferguson Library. I love what Elizabeth does with her outreach and her community programs. And I think more than ever, we realize now how important these community programs are and connection with the community. So we applaud you, Elizabeth, and we applaud Ferguson for doing these programs. And we love the fact that we're here. The fact that we are here is rather interesting. And some of you may have seen Melissa. She's been speaking a lot about her journey, and she's been speaking a lot about her book, and she's really been out there a lot this last month or so. And she doesn't bring me with her often, but I'm here today, and maybe she won't again. But I figure that since I'm here, I might like to talk with Melissa about some things that don't often come out during discussions with Melissa.
Oh boy, here goes.
So I thought that
I knew I was going to regret this.
That's right. Can she mute me? So I thought it might be fun just for everyone to get to know Melissa, who joined us tonight. We appreciate you giving your time to join us, but maybe allow you to get to know Melissa even a little bit differently than you might have otherwise gotten to know Melissa.
Wow.
So I would be remiss if I didn't start with the fact that speaking here with our friends at Ferguson Library, I could truly say that this is a homecoming for us, because I would like to ask Melissa if she remembers going back 25, 30 years, going back to the beginnings of Melissa and Doug, the significance of Ferguson to us and everything that we have done since then.
Absolutely.
All right.
I mean, Ferguson is part of the Melissa and Doug folklore. And we spent, oh gosh, was it weeks? We spent
Many
all
weeks.
day, every day for weeks in front of the microfiche at the bottom of Ferguson
Do
Library.
you still have microfiche? Is there still microfiche at Ferguson? That's where we spent our time.
Yeah, because we were trying to look up stores to sell our products to, and we couldn't really access, there was no internet, so there was no way of getting lists of stores throughout the country. So we decided we would use microfiche, and Ferguson Library had such an incredible, vast, repository of microfiche that we ended up spending all our days there for at least a couple months.
Exactly. We spent a lot of time at Ferguson. So being back with Ferguson tonight is especially important for us, and especially a wonderful memory for us. We grew up not too far from there. Our parents were really all involved in education in the area. Melissa's mother was a teacher in Norwalk, and her father was actually an educational publisher. And my father was the elementary school principal in Reading, and my mother was a guidance counselor in Norwalk. So we spent a lot of time in the area. And Stamford, and I'm guessing a lot of people here may be from Stamford tonight, is also where we have so many of our great beginnings when we started Melissa and Doug, and can really remember, and maybe if you'll allow us to reminisce for a moment, but some of our very first customers and retailers that we worked with were in Stamford, and some of our favorite retailers that we've worked with for years. Seth at Baby and Toy Superstore, Saul's was one of our very, very first relationships we had. Walden Kids was based in Stamford and one of our very first customers. Building Blocks was one of our very first customers. So we grew up and we've spent a lot of time in Stamford. So we're especially grateful to be back and spending time with the community now. So I guess one of the things I will ask is, so when you go back from those early days and looking on microfiche and all of our development that we did in the toy industry and developing toys and all of that, could you have imagined then that fast forward 30 years that you would be having a conversation with people at Ferguson about something completely different, like Lifelines?
No, I never would have imagined that. I don't think I'd imagine talking about anything related to anything 30 years ago, because those days were were tough, those days we ate ramen and turkey hot dogs for 2 meals a day because we really couldn't afford anything else. And those were tough days. We drove around in a very beat up car.
We borrowed it from my dad.
Yep. And pretty much borrowed and begged for everything we received. So those were tough times. And I don't think we ever imagined that we would be where we are today. At least I didn't. Maybe you did. You were more of an optimist. I think I was less of one.
So a few weeks ago, you were on CBS Sunday Morning with a magnificent segment that was hosted by the brilliant and insightful David Pogue. And so much has really changed since then. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what type of an inflection point was that? And how have things changed for you in that brief time since a few weeks ago? What have you learned and what do you look at differently than a few weeks ago?
Wow. Yes, so we had the opportunity to work with CBS Sunday Morning, which was one of the best experiences of my life because they cared about this story so much. And they ended up filming with us for days and really getting to know us and the story so deeply that it felt like they were almost family by the time they left. And one of the questions David asked me.
They ate a lot. We know that. They ate a lot.
They ate like family.
Yeah, they ate like
family. And we fed them like family.
We did.
But one of the questions David asked me that wasn't really in the segment, it was in a little extra, was what is going to happen if like tons of people reach out to you after this?
I think he said you could hear from 10,000 people.
And I looked at him incredulously because throughout my life, I've always asked people to contact me directly. And I've always loved when people contact me because I'm looking, probably because I need the validation, but I'm looking to connect with people, authentically. So throughout my life, I've been able to handle that because I'll speak and, I'll get one person to reach out, sometimes two, or if it's like a really powerful moment, maybe a handful, but I've always been able to really handle it and respond to them. But I think I never imagined that after that piece aired that I would receive in maybe 2 days, close to 10,000 letters from individuals. And it was something that I had never quite experienced because I never imagined that sharing my story, which I had never even dignified because I never even believed it was worth dignifying, would touch others to want to share their stories as well. And what opened up, it was like this chasm of despair that opened up and had all those people sharing their deepest, darkest secrets with me, which was really profound.
And when David asked you that question, I also remember your answer when he asked, what would you do? And your answer was, I will respond to every single one of them. And that would explain why I have not seen Melissa very much in the last few weeks, because she has responded to every single one. It's that important to her. And frankly, I know how much work and effort it has been as I see you there still at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And, but I also know how important it has been to you. And I see some of those letters and you're not just saying, thank you for writing in. You're really engaging. And I think that that's an amazing thing. And I don't know that many people would actually do that.
Yeah, it's funny, at dinner, our son just said to me, why do you respond to everyone who writes you? Famous people don't do that. And I said to him, because I'm not a famous person, I'm a relatable person. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, you don't want to be a famous person? And it's like, no, the whole reason I'm doing this is to show individuals that they're not alone. Because I grew up my entire life because of qualities I believed would be stigmatizing if I showed them. I believed that no one would ever understand me for who I was. So when these people, I was getting emotional as you were saying that, because when these people reach out to me, and share their secrets that they've never felt comfortable sharing with anyone. And these aren't teenagers. These are people who are 60, 70, 80, some 90 years old, who are telling me they're sharing their story with me, the only person, for the first time. I mean, I have to respond to them. And it is my responsibility to figure out a way to do it. So, for a couple days after that deluge, I felt so overwhelmed, and I didn't want to make it about me because it was about them, but I didn't know if I had the ability to respond to all of them personally, because it was so much time that it was going to take. But as I stopped thinking about it, because my whole mantra is to get out of the head and into the heart, and I just said, I'm going to do it one at a time. I'm going to be intentional every day. I'm going to do this for 5-6 hours until it's done. And it might take me a few weeks, which it did, but I'm going to do it. And lo and behold, I got there. So, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders, because I wanted every one of those people who had the courage to reach out to me to feel like they were truly seen.
So let me change it up a little bit. As we're talking now, and as we're sharing this great time with everyone at Ferguson, what do you say to someone who says, and I know this is a question that you love to think about and answer, because this is such an important question that really goes to really the heart of why you're doing this. What do you say to someone who says, she wrote a book about depression? Because speaking with you, one might not guess that you have tough days. One might not guess it. And I think that that's a large part of what this is all about. So how do you answer that?
Yeah, I think when you adopt a facade your whole life to be accepted and to function, when you come out and you say that you've sort of been pushing down something and not showing the world something that's very evident within you, I think there are people who are always surprised. And I've had many absolutely shocked, including my own parents, who basically said, we had no idea, you acted like you were happy-go-lucky and optimistic your whole life. And, I had to sort of laugh, because I wrote these verses from the time I was 3 years old that were probably the most despairing thing you could ever read. So it was in everything I wrote and everything I reflected upon. But because I never believed I'd be accepted for that, I never showed it. So I think, depression doesn't discriminate, and depression is stigmatized. Mm-hmm. So those of us, now that I've received 10,000 letters, I can really start to see the themes that are very prevalent in so many of us who are afflicted. And one of the most common is the facade. The world would have never guessed. That's sort of very common words I read, because we all tend to do the same things, right? We deny, we repress, and we disassociate from things that are dark, because society tells us it's not good to feel dark things. And it's surely not good to say you are depressed, because society wants us to be happy and shiny. And we look at advertisements. Do advertisements ever show families where people are like sulking, or where someone's not even in the photo because they're hiding in their room because they're too terrified to come downstairs? No, we're taught that people are happy all the time. So when we're not, we believe something's wrong with us. And that's what I believed my whole life. So I vowed to not show that to the world and to hide behind a shiny exterior.
So you've been perceptibly cruising through life very well in what most people would look at and say is a wonderful spot to be in right now. You have 6 amazing children.
A stunning Adonis of a husband.
Yes, right.
And I win the jackpot.
Shocking, very shocking, that in itself. Yep, that would be enough to do it.
Why isn't the woman happy all the time?
The consolation prize. She likes to call me the consolation prize.
Look at what she got.
Right, if things had gone well, you wouldn't have been stuck with this.
I'm saying that you're the reason I should be happy all the time.
She has wonderful dogs who are resting by her side right now in the room with us. Wonderful homes, a wonderful home we're in now. Other wonderful homes where you get to walk along the beach and experience things that most others don't get to experience. An amazing company that has 70 or 80 million wonderful children's products landing in the hands of children every year. You could have chosen right now to just sit back and enjoy all of that and kind of look at it and just smile with it. So why is it that you've chosen to take on probably one of the largest things you've ever taken on in your life and to invest all of yourself, because this isn't something that you could do with part of yourself? Why is it that you chose to do this at this point?
Actually, I'm going to turn that back to you. Why did you choose to do this with me?
Did I choose?
Yeah, you crazy man.
Did I choose? I don't remember when that question came.
Yeah, you did say I'm right by your side.
I did say I'm right by your side. I'm not sure that I knew the full legal ramifications of that comment, yeah. But I did say I'm right by your side.
So why did you choose to do it with me?
I'll be happy to answer that. I chose to do this because I have always been by your side and I've seen everything that you've done for so many, and you've always been a person who does nothing but give to others, give to others, give to others. You never think about yourself first. And if you're taking on something like this, I wanted you to know that I am going to be with you every single step of the way, and I'm going to support every single thing that you do, because that's what you would do for anybody else. Aww, that's why.
That is so sweet. He's the sweetest. Yeah, and I think that's beautiful, by the way. You know, I did this because I got to a point where the cry of my own soul to be seen authentically became so loud that I couldn't deny it any longer. And I think we all get to that crossroads in our life where we know that we need to come out as we truly are. We're just terrified of doing so because for so many years, the world has told us we're not okay exactly as we are. So once I had the courage to do that and actually saw that all these things that I felt stigmatized me were actually the same qualities that gave me the ability to create and were my blurs, my blessing and my curse, I realized how many others are feeling the same way. And I felt like it was such a revelation to know I wasn't alone. And there were so many others who were like me that I needed to share that with the world. I became like impelled. I must share the truth that we have to, one, commune with others to not feel so alone. Two, take our darkness and transform it into radiant light and find meaning. And three, stop racing outside ourselves for the answer and finally stop and have the courage to make that journey inward and accept ourselves in totality. So I think realizing that made me say, I'm sorry, Dee, but I've got to spend the rest of my life doing this.
And nothing makes me happier than to see the joy that it brings you. And I think this is your true joy. I don't think there's anything you could do that would ever bring more joy. And one of the things that's risen, because there really hasn't been a lot of planning that has gone into this, it's kind of happening organically. And one of the things I've seen happen organically is that you have been through our ecosystem. We have a online ecosystem at lifelines.com. And at lifelines.com, we have a lot of content and we have a lot of workshops and we have a lot of discussions. We have a journey. And I should say, all of this costs you a grand total of $0 and 0 cents. It's all stuff that Melissa has produced in order to share with others and share the journey that she's been on to try to help as many people as she can. But I remember in one of the very, very first workshops that you did online, I remember a person who was in the workshop, and these are very two-way, very interactive, a lot of amazing things get talked about. And I remember one of the, a woman in the workshop said, she raised her hand and she said, I thought I was the only one who ever experienced that and felt that way. And that was kind of for me when I realized one of the many incredible values of what you're doing is you're helping people realize truly they are not alone, truly, because it's one thing to say it, but another thing to talk with people who experience. So these workshops that you've been doing, I don't think they were originally planned, but by gosh, you have thousands of people, and I now you've added others so they could be smaller format, so you could keep the group smaller and try to keep it to 30 and 40 so it's more discussion oriented. But I think those have been so meaningful. So talk a little bit about these workshops and how they came about and what you think they are able to do to support others who are on their own journeys.
Great question. Yeah, I think, coming out authentically for me also meant that we're going to talk about the things no one wants to talk about. And the very volumes of my book are some of those topics because they were the disparate pieces of myself that I needed to reintegrate into my soul. So, some of them like perfectionism and martyrdom and loneliness and hypocrisy and things that we don't talk about in society. I mean, we don't talk about anything that is stigmatizing. We only talk about like the upper half of the emotional spectrum that's like all happy and shiny. So I vowed that in this community, we were going to talk about those things. And we started doing it even prior to the community launching with our small groups that we called igniters. And we saw that we were having like incredible resonance when we talked about things like loneliness and how it really feels when you feel utterly and completely alone. And things like martyrdom, which no one even knew what it meant, but so many of us fall into these serving roles and we end up serving from an empty well and becoming incredibly resentful and bereft, and understanding what it means to be a martyr and how we can get out of that trap. So, the end of the workshops are always ways to get out of the hole we're in. And I think I became really excited about going through all the myths that society gives us, all these sort of ideals that we're supposed to achieve. And because we can't, we're always left feeling like inadequate and unworthy because we can't. And that we're going to take every single one of them and just like bust right through them. So we're talking about things like the pursuit of happiness, the American nightmare, or this on Friday, we're talking about the myth of balance, and all these things that nobody talks about. But when we talk about them, like there's nothing better. And I love the grid screen with the little grids. And when we're talking, there's nothing better than having people go like this and nodding and seeing people crying and they go like this and they do little hearts. And when you see that you're talking about something that you wanted to talk about your whole life and no one would let you, or you didn't feel comfortable doing, and you're talking about it with hundreds of people and they're all like basically cheering, you're onto something. And today we had a workshop just this afternoon. It was on getting unstuck, which is a theme in so many of my letters. I'm in this place and dark place and I can't get out. So, and again, we're not professionals, like we're peer-to-peer support. So we're really just sharing our experiences and our own strategies in hopes that they resonate with others. But when people are crying, like lots of them crying, and you see in the chat, they're like, Susie, contact me, like I can help you with this, and putting their email address, and you're seeing these connections come. There's nothing better. Like I feel like I am soaring a million miles above Earth.
At one of the first workshops, there was a woman who asked a question, and I remember her question and how thoughtful and helpful it was, that the question that she raised. And her name was Keisha. And then a couple of nights ago, you had a workshop, and it was entitled Spotlight on Keisha. And you had Keisha by your side. I believe that I might be wrong, from Oklahoma. and you had Keisha with you by your side for a full discussion. And talk a little bit about that. What brought that about, and what are you hoping that others who are participating in that session, what can they get out of that by hearing your discussion with Keisha?
Yeah, so, the book Lifelines was honestly really never necessarily meant to get out into the world. It was really my story. And I feel like when we can share our stories, there is nothing more healing, because our stories are the tapestry of our lives. And sometimes we can't see that story until we can get distance from it in writing it down. So I wrote my story and found such relief in writing it. And then I decided to share it in hopes that it would allow others to tell their stories as well. And it did. And Keisha, as I started to get to know her, I realized that she has a story. I mean, she has experienced so much tragedy and trauma in her life. However, she took all that and she did not get snowed under by it. She was able to transform her profound darkness into radiant light. And she is now a chaplain and helping others through grief, which she suffered so much of throughout her life. So I think when we have the chance to share others' stories, and their stories of hope, they're people who had everything happen to them, yet had the courage to stare it in the eye and surmount it and learn from it and help others based on their experience. There's nothing more powerful. And that is what we aim to do. We want to encourage so many others to write, to journal, to share their stories in hopes that they can find healing from it and really find their meaning and their purpose in using their experience to connect with others and help them.
I think that I was speaking with someone a few days ago, and she said to me that Lifelines is such an amazing name for what you're doing, because it encapsulates so much, and there's so many meanings to it. It's not just one. I know you love double entendres, but that might be a triple or a quadruple. Yeah. And so maybe you could share a little bit about what Lifelines means to you, and then as significantly, maybe you could speak with some of the folks listening in tonight about your thoughts in terms of how they could get in touch with their lifelines and the significance of that.
Woo, good questions, Dee. You are nailing it. These are good ones. These are the best. So
watch out, David.
Yeah, really. Watch out, CBS. He's coming after you. So Lifelines is maybe the greatest word of my life, because I used it in so many of my verses before it became the title of my book and the title of this whole ecosystem, because words were always my lifelines, meaning the things I used to actually keep me afloat in a world that was really dark. So I wrote these verses my entire life, and they became my lifelines, my mantras that I would repeat to myself in times of darkness so I wouldn't fall under the line. And they were lifelines in being my beacons, but they were also lifelines because they were lines of verse. So I loved the fact that it had that double meaning. But lifelines in our ecosystem and in people's lives become all those things that you need as your deliberate practice to remain steadfast in a world and a life that will be undulating and full of ebbs and flows and ups and downs and the full spectrum of emotion, the full spectrum from high to low. So our lifelines become our practice. That, what I say, keeps me equanimous each and every day. And I use metaphors for everything. And you'll see in our journey online, my lifelines are in my backpack. And I have an inward and onward backpack that I wear metaphorically each and every day. And my lifelines are in there because I need my lifelines. Like, I am afflicted with a mental condition, existential depression. And if I don't enlist my lifelines each and every day, I will go below the line and be at risk for not coming back up. So I have had to depend on this practice every single day to be safe and sane. And it consists of three areas. It consists of self-care, which are all the things you do to be kind to your body, including things like eating and sleeping and other things. It includes tools and skills, which are kind of the therapeutic practices I've adopted, mantras and therapy, and a lot of the practices that help me get out of my head and into my heart and offer myself compassion. And then the last category are our passions and our play. And those are the beautiful hobbies done for nothing other than the joy we engage in to feel in our hearts and to be in the moment, like playing with pets, walking in nature, any sort of creative outlet, any form of self-expression, those type of things.
So this is, arguably been a tough time and a tough period of time for many of us. So for someone who's listening with us tonight, what would you say, what can she do? What can he do? What can they do that can happen now, that can be a step in the right direction, a step forward in terms of identifying your lifelines and how to use your lifelines?
Yeah, we were just talking about this today in our Unstuck workshop. I think the first thing we have to do is make the choice to choose life and to choose ourselves and to get unstuck, because many of us are invested in our pain. And we say we want to be unstuck, but we're really terrified of doing anything to get out of that unstuck place and taking responsibility for our lives. So I think the first thing comes in saying, and that's what I had to do. I reached a point when I didn't want to be stuck anymore and denying who I was. And I basically said the words, I choose life. And that changed my life, because once I chose life and chose myself, it meant I had to act consistently with that. And that meant I had to self-care, I had to do the tools and skills, and I had to engage my passions and my play. So first it's, do you choose life? Do you want to be here? Do you choose yourself? If the answer is yes, then I would make a list of, what does that mean you need to do? What does that mean you need to change in your life if you're choosing yourself and choosing life? And I like to start with baby steps. What does that mean you're going to do with self-care? Does it mean you're going to shower for the first time in weeks? Because a lot of us, when we're in a dark place, we don't even want to get out of bed. We don't even make our beds. Maybe it means you're going to pull up the shades today and you're going to make your bed. That's a big step for someone. Maybe it just means you're going to make yourself a healthy meal for the first time and actually cook for yourself, not eat out of a, box. It's little things. And then, the two key things that you need to do to feel hopeful about life is, one, engage in meaningful connections with people who accept you for who you are, which so many of us have stopped doing due to the past year. And the second is engaging in meaningful passions that put you in your heart and engage you in the flow of life. And I think many of us, because either our roles disappeared, our jobs ended, we lost connection with people, we aren't feeling that sense of meaning in our lives. And that, by definition, will ultimately put you into a place of despair.
So before, I know Elizabeth will have some questions from some folks who are listening, which will be wonderful. I know you love to do that. Before I do that, I just would love to, a lot of times when I come into our little home office and you're teary-eyed and reading a note and you ask to share one with me, I just wonder, obviously without being specific or identifying, if there's,
oh no, you're going to get me emotional.
If there's one in particular that you might want to share.
There's so many, they're so beautiful. But there's one I got today from someone at a correctional facility who said that they have one of, and I sent about 2 weeks ago, he reached out to me and he said, they have a copy of the book and they're grabbing it like it's candy, and they are clinging to the verses like salvation and Some of them are writing them on angels. Some of them are putting them on their windows. Some are writing them on their hands, and they're repeating them every day. And he asked me if I could send them some other verses that they could cherish. And I write them every day. I write like 8 or 10 a day. So I sent him some brand new ones. And he wrote me again today, and he said that one of them is getting out next week, and for her leaving gift, he's taking one of the verses and he's framing it and giving it to her.
So nice.
Yeah.
Great. And on that note, I return Melissa to you, Elizabeth.
Oh gosh, and now my eyes are burning.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, everyone.
What a way to
I have
end.
one of my sensitivities is my eyes. And when I get emotional, they start burning. And that means for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to probably have my eyes closed, but this happens quite often now. So you're experiencing a hypersensitivity in the making right now.
That was some way to end the conversation, Doug.
You're muted.
That was some way to end the conversation, Doug. You can't hear me?
Oh, I think now it's muted.
Yeah.
Oh, it is, but now it
Now
shouldn't
it looks
be.
like it's off mute. It's off mute, but we don't hear you.
We don't hear you.
What about now?
Hold
We have
on.
someone
Yeah,
that's
no,
here that might be able
because,
to help.
Yeah. Gives me a chance to fix my eyes.
That we can hear, the audience can hear me.
Oh no. Maybe we can just, if the questions can be posted.
If they post them,
we
yeah,
can
Melissa, is
answer
there a way
them.
that they can be posted?
Okay, sure. Let me start out by posting.
We can hit this so they can hear all of us. We just can't hear Elizabeth.
So can you hear us now?
I can hear you,
Okay,
but
good.
Okay, so
So
we will
post the questions.
continue then,
Okay.
and if you're able to post any questions, or even if you're able to let's see, it says something there actually. What does that say?
They can hear us.
Everyone, we can hear both. Okay,
Good.
so maybe
Post the
it might be
questions.
just at our end then.
Yeah, post the
Yeah, sounds
questions
like it's
and
on
we
our
will
end.
answer them. We don't want to
Okay.
take
Yeah.
any more time. We heard her before though. Can you post them in words?
Yeah, if you're able to post it in a chat, because we do see one chat got
There we
posted
go.
there. Tell
Yes.
us about the genesis of your book and the process.
Oh, that's a great question. So I have written these verses ever since I've been 2 years old, and they always rhyme, and they usually come out completely formed. And they're really the way I made sense of questions that I didn't have the answers for, and I was too terrified to ask anyone. So when I finally decided to put my whole life together, I had over 3,000 verses that had never been seen and had been sort of collecting dust in like the dark crevices of my furniture. My lifeline, that's a lifeline. They're both lifelines, my two male lifelines. And those verses were the truest reflection of who I was. And I had been terrified to let them see the world because they were very despairing, some of them, and very simple. So what I did to decide how this book would lay out was I laid out all the verses and I divided them into categories, and they actually perfectly fit into 11 categories. There were like 300 plus verses in 11 different categories, and those became the volumes of the book. It was crazy. So they basically, the book is 11 volumes. They're called volumes because each one could technically be read independently. But they do follow a storyline, and each one has prose and journal writings from when I was a young child on, and then follows with the verses that match that prose. And then I married it with one of my favorite things, and Doug's too, which is nature. And I think nature is its own volume and is one of both our lifelines. I don't think I would still be here without nature because it teaches me all the lessons I need to learn. So we used photos of some of our favorite places in the world throughout it. So it's a combination of verses, photos, and prose in one.
Let's see if we might hear you now. Try it now.
Okay, so the
There we
next,
go.
oh, can you hear me now?
Yep,
Perfectly.
perfectly.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So our next question is, Melissa, could you talk about what it's like to build and run a company while dealing with severe depression and anxiety?
That's a great
Yeah.
question. You know, it's funny for me, it was actually one of the best things that could happen because I never really hid who I was at the company. And I don't think I ever was this like brash leader who went out and just gave this shiny smile. I really was the creative at the company. And, you know, creating toys was absolutely my salvation. You know, for the first 20 plus years of my life before we formed Melissa and Doug, I created incessantly. It was my most innate form of soothing, but I never found meaning through it because the creations were so dark and so despairing. But when I started to create toys from that very same despair, it was like I could breathe for the very first time. And making toys was the best, most incredible feeling I could ever experience. So that experience and doing it with Doug and everything we went through and working 24/7 and having 6 kids, it was actually really good for someone like me because I barely had time to get in my head and think. Like it was just doing and acting and reacting and creating. And I would say those 25, the 25 major years in the middle, they flew by, right? And like,
No.
well, they were tough years too, but meaning it was very good for me to be in that routine and to know that at every moment someone needed me and I needed to be there for them and I couldn't wallow.
It's interesting from my observation. That question could almost be turned around because one would think it would be tough for Melissa to do what she was doing while feeling this way. But I would almost observe that it was almost the opposite. It's what helped her through that time period. And I think that's what she refers to, I think, as a lifeline. And obviously not everyone can start a company like Melissa and Doug, but her lifeline was creating. And the other thing is, Melissa never, when she creates, she never does it toward an end. She was never thinking along the way, how does this lead to a bigger company? She was only focusing on the specific creative item that she was producing at that particular moment. And she was so zoned in on it. And that's the only thing that mattered. So in a way, that was a perfect example of a lifeline. And she says that creating toys for Melissa and Doug is the most important lifeline over that period of time of her life.
And the truth is, I never felt pressure doing it. That's the crazy thing, as someone who was such a perfectionist and felt so much fear in failing. When I create, I go to the purest place ever and I don't feel anything but bliss. So I think with every toy, I felt that same sense of just utter euphoria.
Great, thank you, Melissa. Our next question is, how did you go about breathing lifelines.com, the website? Have you consulted any experts? Have you benchmarked best practices? And just how long it took you to get this perfect, online community?
There's 2 questions.
There is like 2 questions.
Well, I'll let Melissa answer the content, but I'll answer the other part about no, we don't. Melissa and I don't like to benchmark, and we truly like to try to innovate and create things that haven't existed before. And that's, when we began to create this ecosystem, I think the very first thing we said was we are going to create something that there's never been anything quite like it. And I think that was our goal in setting out.
Yeah, we wanted to take a journey that I took metaphorically in my head and make it something that others could take virtually, which was so cool. And when I first shared it with Doug, he was like, oh my gosh, we're going to make this happen. And it was so great.
No, I think it was more like, oh my gosh, we're gonna make this happen. It wasn't, oh my gosh, it was, oh my gosh.
And I'm like, and there's a backpack, and there's a compass, and there are acorns, and there's pine cones.
And I remember saying to Melissa, I'm sorry, and this is a website we're making, or this is just a story we're telling somewhere.
Yep, it is. Yeah, it was so much fun because it was really like, I felt like we were creating this fantasy world that others were going to be able to go on this journey inward toward, you know, self-acceptance. So it was really fun bringing it to life. And again, it was my journey. And, you know, I did write the journey with my own therapist. So, you know, to make sure it was therapeutically sound, but we're saying if someone goes on the journey and they feel triggered and they feel they can't do it, they should enlist the help of a therapist. But that was the only person that we, you know, enlisted because I wanted to make sure. And of course I knew it was sound because I did it with her. But I wanted her help in making sure that, because I wrote it, and you know, there were things that I needed tweaking to make sure that it made sense in that therapeutic way. So she helped, and then we, you know, for our beautiful videos that are part of the content, we have a really good member of our team, Erica, who's a very well-known yoga and meditation expert, and she wanted to partner with us and create videos and exercises exactly for this journey, which was incredible. So I think we enlisted a really soulful team to bring it together, and it was a beautiful process.
And it still is. It's dynamic.
Yeah,
it's
it's changing every day.
Build on it all the time.
We're going to build on it all the time. Yeah, but we're happy with the fact that we could take something. I mean, that's the very definition of innovation, when you can take something that is truly a spark and bring it to life in a way that others can enjoy it as well.
Great, thank you. We have a really touching question. It reads, our adult daughter has suffered with depression, anxiety, and ADHD her entire life. She doesn't like groups and has no friends. The pandemic has actually been good for her in that she doesn't have to meet with people in person. But now that things are opening up, how can we try to help her open up her life?
Oh, and just so whoever wrote that knows, they are not alone. I would say over half of the letters I get are from parents whose children are suffering. And I know because we've had children, our own children suffer as well. So I'm right there with you. And to be honest, if you have a few kids, I think all of us, one of our kids is probably in a despairing place. It's that prevalent now. So you're not alone, first of all. And secondly, I think, unfortunately, we have to engage in the very behaviors that are the most difficult for us in order to allow the despair to ease. I mean, you know, she needs to somehow connect with others, you know, and it could be through our ecosystem, because lots of folks in our ecosystem feel the exact same way and are despairing and haven't left the house and are terrified of leaving the house. So the nice thing is Zoom allows you to do that. And there are many online communities that people have joined where they meet people and have profound relationships, and they don't have to do it publicly. But I think gradually, once you develop those relationships, you hope that over time, if she develops some close relationships, you know, virtually, that they can say, let's meet at a place in between us and go for a walk. And I've found that with my own kids, it can go from the virtual very seamlessly these days to the physical. And I think that's okay. Like, I'm an introvert, you know, I can't stand big crowds. They make me extremely panicky. But I can engage in one-on-one relationships beautifully. And that doesn't make me any less, you know, any less of a person or worthy. And I think to admit that is just fine. And then the other thing I would say is, you know, all of us need to sow the seeds of self-expression in our souls, meaning we all need a reason to be here. And if we don't have it, if we're just like going through the motions, we are going to fall into despair. And so many of us don't know what our seeds of self-expression are. And because of that, we don't have meaning in our lives. So we need to find those. And, you know, it's a deliberate practice. You don't just wake up one day. Some of us do. You know, I'm fortunate. I mean, creativity is mine and I've known it since I was born. So in a way, I'm more fortunate than some. But those of us who don't know it, well, guess what? We've got to find it. And they're there. And you can find it by, you know, we talk about it a little bit on our journey at the letter E, the end. You can ask yourself questions. You can go back to your childhood. You can really think about those times when time stops and you feel so happy. We all have those things that we long to do if we didn't have societal pressure, if we didn't have time constraints, if we didn't have other things. So I think helping her to discover what her gifts are so she can begin to utilize them and find meaning in her life.
Wait, she also asked where Doug got a shirt from, because apparently she likes it.
I love
he wears
this shirt.
great shirts.
It's one of my favorite shirts. Thank you. And I think I did find it online. Thank you.
We had a question in chat that asked, how do you both support each other? I guess in life and in this process and business and all of it.
Do you want to answer that? No.
I think that maybe first and most importantly by being empathetic and a good listener and really understanding and listening. And you know, I can remember over years, and sometimes I hear Melissa, she'll say, yes, people would say to me this or that. And I'm saying, wait, that was me, I think you're talking about. And, but I think that I've paid attention in order to learn what is the thing that I could do that's most supportive, because sometimes it's not what you might guess. And sometimes it's not, for example, saying, what's wrong today? That's probably about the worst thing that I could ever say to Melissa. And I'm sure that I did say it back in the day, but I've tried to listen because I don't want to be brought up in any more of her verses in her future books. And so I try to listen and really pay attention to understanding that she has a composition that might be different than mine, and some things that I might want to hear might be different than things that she might want to hear. And so it's being respectful and truly empathetic and truly allowing, as she would say, getting out of your head and into your heart and allowing yourself to really understand what your partner might be most in need of.
Yeah, Doug's been amazing. And I think grown so much because, you know, I'm a tough one to live with because I'm really, I'm really unsettled and, you know, can vacillate from deep highs to deep lows. So I think he's gotten much more sensitive at sort of just allowing me to work through that because I'm able to work through it on my own. I just need this space to do it. And I think what I try to do, you know, I try to spend a lot of time with him. Because I think what happens, especially when you have 6 kids and a growing business, you know, there were times when we were together, but we weren't like, we were always together, but we weren't spending quality time together. And I remember when I felt like we were like separating, even though we were together, and we said, we need a Saturday not date night. Like we need one little time, even if it's an hour, to just get out of the house together and actually talk like adults, like people. And we started doing that. And it became, I remember I didn't want to do it at the beginning because I didn't want to leave the kids and I felt so much guilt. But the more we did it, it became like, that's all I looked forward to all week. And any week that we couldn't do it, I was like really almost crying.
Largely because of the food.
No,
I mean, let's be honest.
No, it was just so nice to like just be able to talk with him and not be, so distracted. Like I was always so distracted because there was always 3 or 4 kids around me, and I yelling for me at the same time Doug was talking to me. And I felt like he wasn't getting the attention he
But
deserved.
I think one of the important things is just understanding, and managing expectations for things and being respectful of, as Melissa says, sometimes, we go on a walk every single day or 2, sometimes 2 walks. And sometimes, and these are, 4 miles, and sometimes for the entire walk, we talk the entire time. Other times I can tell she's, thinking about something, and I just let it be, and we walk, we're together. But she's just thinking through something or just focusing on something. So I think I think being sensitive to the person that you're with is important.
Yeah. It's work though, like everything, it's a practice, it doesn't just happen. And I would say to anybody, like relationships take like practice and intention to be there, to be present, to keep growing together every single day. So I know it looks like it's bliss and it is, but it takes, it does take work.
Melissa and Doug, I hope you have a minute for another question.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up. I think this one is a great way to end your conversation, but Eleanor wants to know if you could give us an example of one of your verses.
Of one of my verses?
Yes.
Oh gosh. Yeah, sure. I think, this was when I realized that I needed to make a choice, whether to continue down the path I was going or basically choose the cry of my soul. So there comes a point in life when we've a vital choice to make, for the future is dependent on which avenue we take, either traveling the channel of resistance and repression or advancing toward the soul intent on hearing its confession.
Thank you, Melissa. That was beautiful. It's been such a joy to be in your presence this evening. I think everyone that has been here, just from reading their chat and their questions, I think that you have really made a huge difference in their lives, and not just through the book, but also through the website. So I wanted to share that before we left. I also wanted to let people know that there's a few places where you can buy the book. We have it here at the Ferguson Library where you can borrow it for 3 weeks, but not keep it. But you also have Elm Street Books, the Barrett Bookstore, and the Barnes & Noble in Stamford, where you can purchase the book.
Thank you.
In addition to that, you can also learn more about Lifelines through their website, lifelines.com. And then, as Melissa said, she's open to communication. So,
and I'm caught up now.
Yeah, so let's keep her busy.
Bring it on. Yeah, so last time I said bring it on, I was in trouble.
So let's keep her busy for another 2 weeks at least. So that's Melissa with a capital M, Bernstein, capital B, at lifelines.com. Thank you so much, Melissa and Doug. It's been wonderful, again, being here with you. Thank you so much for doing this. We look forward to seeing what's next.
Thank you. And know, all of you, like, you are not alone. So many people are struggling right now, and know that there is support for you at lifelines.com, free community. So join us if you're in need of some, support, some communion, some connection. We have a workshop every single day.
Great. Thank you, and good night, Dan.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.